Hi guys, my name is Mark. Today I'd like to talk about individualism and collectivism, my experiences with them, and also my observations. So basically, to give you guys some context about who I am a Filipino American. I was born here in the States, but from ages 4 to 9, I lived in the Philippines. The moment that I had my first class, I instantly felt very lonely. And I think during that time, I had a very difficult time like explaining it. I thought that maybe it was like an issue with me. Maybe um, the people in my class just for whatever reason didn't like me or something. But what I realized as I grew older was that there was like a huge culture shock. And it's not even just like the fact that, I'm Filipino, I was living in the Philippines, and now being in the States, it's completely different in the sense that, like, we just like different things, we do different things. But what I want to attribute it to, is specifically in our cultures, Western cultures are very individualistic and Eastern cultures are very collectivistic. To define individualism for you, it is a social and philosophical theory prioritizing the autonomy, rights, and interests of the individual over the group or state. Whereas collectivism is a cultural, psychological, and political framework prioritizing group goals, harmony, and interdependence over individual desires. And what that essentially means is that, people in individualistic cultures are more concerned about like their own personal well-being rather than the group, whereas collectivists tend to sacrifice their own well-being for the group. How that translates into like my own lived experience is that it just felt as if they were more concerned about developing their own personality and showing off who they were, versus in the Philippines, it felt like it was always about like, okay, like I'm going to do this with my friend. I'm going to invite the new kid to make them feel like they're home. Um, I want to make sure that everybody's doing well, and that could just be my own experience. There is this term called a rugged individualism, right? So, rugged individualism is the belief that individuals should rely on their own efforts, resourcefulness, and independence rather than relying on government assistance or social safety nets. And I think rugged individualism even just applies to like how we view ourselves and how we do not want help from others. I think, there's many of you guys who probably can relate, um, with the sense that like, oh, you want to be able to be self-sufficient in anything that you do, succeed in anything you do without the help of others. But I think, especially like coming from a Eastern culture, that's almost a little foreign. Like we don't really like, we don't do our best to be the best. We do our best to help others. I don't want to make it seem like Western cultures are like evil and like Eastern cultures are just so much better. But I think in general, like hyper individualism, too much of any good thing is a bad thing. Um, when I like earlier, I talked about social safety nets. Essentially, what a social safety net is a collection of government funded programs designed to provide essential support to individuals and families experiencing economic hardship or poverty. Um, the thing with the way that Western cultures view people who have less than them is that, like, oh, they should be able to make it on their own. They need to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, not understanding that there may be socioeconomic issues that are holding them back from achieving success. Um, Things that, that are kind of invisible to the naked eye. And that is like really frustrating, especially because John Locke, in 1689, he wrote two treatises on governments, and essentially he established the social contract. What the social contract is essentially the idea that people give implicit consent to the authority of a government in exchange for protection. Um, we the way that the government works is that we give them consent to govern us in order to essentially for us to survive. You know, they establish rules that is supposed to benefit the people, and there are a lot of people who don't think that one government should even like interfere in a lot of things, but like how else are we supposed to get things done without the help of the masses, without the help of the people? The way that like tax dollars work, I don't know about like in this country per se, but tax dollars are supposed to help us. That we send money to the government so that they put that money into things that are supposed to help us, And of course, like it isn't perfect in Eastern cultures either, specifically the Philippines. So the social safety nets in the Philippines are very lacking. I would go as far as to say that they don't exist. Most recently in 2025, there was a typhoon that hit the Philippines and caused a ton of flooding. And yet there were billions of dollars, Philippine pesos, that were poured into a budget specifically to create a flood system that would, make sure that certain disasters wouldn't happen like that. However, the government decided, or specifically like some officials decided to pocket that money, and a lot of people died, and a lot of people lost their livelihoods in that storm. Um, and I think in general, what I've noticed is that there are a lot of things about specifically individualism that I'm not a huge fan about. I'm not saying that collectivism is the answer to all of that, but just that I think it's important for us to realize that we can't do it all by ourselves. Oftentimes than not, people succeed because of the people around them, and I think it's important to remember that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a great day.